Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez stood at the edge of the live fire training range at Naval Base Coronado, watching the morning fog roll in from the Pacific Ocean. She had her arms crossed, her jaw set tight, as she waited for the evaluation team to arrive. Beside her sat Thor, a Belgian Malinois with deep brown eyes and a coat the color of mahogany. The dog looked up at her, sensing her tension, and she reached down to scratch behind his ears. "We've got this, boy," she whispered, but even as she said it, doubt crept into her mind. Maya had been a military working dog handler for 8 years. She had served 2 tours overseas, where Thor had saved countless lives by detecting explosives before they could harm her unit. She had earned her rank through hard work, dedication, and results. But here at Coronado, home of the Navy SEALs, she was just another face in the crowd. Worse than that, she was a woman in a world that still doubted whether women belonged in combat roles. The evaluation today was crucial. The Special Operations Command was looking for the best K-9 teams to join an elite task force. It was a chance for Maya to prove herself at the highest level, to show that she and Thor deserved to be there. But she knew the odds were stacked against her. A convoy of vehicles pulled up to the range, kicking up dust. Maya straightened her uniform and adjusted her cap. Thor stood at attention beside her, his ears perked forward. The doors opened, and out stepped the evaluation team. There were 5 of them, all men, all wearing the insignia of various special operations units. At the front was Commander James Prescott, a barrel-chested SEAL with silver hair and a reputation for being old school. "Lieutenant Rodriguez," Prescott said, barely glancing at her as he walked past. He was looking at his clipboard, making notes. "You're up first." "Yes, sir," Maya replied, keeping her voice steady. One of the other evaluators, a younger SEAL with a cocky grin, leaned over to his buddy. "They're really scraping the bottom of the barrel now, aren't they?" he muttered, just loud enough for Maya to hear. "What's next, letting the cooks run missions?" The other man laughed. Maya felt her face flush, but she didn't react. She had heard worse over the years. She had learned to let the words bounce off her, to channel her anger into performance. But it still stung every time. "Let's get this over with," Prescott said, checking his watch. "We've got 12 teams to evaluate today. Set up the course." The range master began explaining the exercise. It was a standard special operations scenario. Thor would need to navigate through a mock village, identify hostile targets while avoiding civilians, detect hidden explosives, and respond to Maya's commands under simulated gunfire and explosions. The live fire element meant real bullets would be flying overhead, real explosives would be detonating nearby. It was designed to test both the dog's training and the handler's ability to keep control under extreme stress. Maya had run Thor through similar courses dozens of times. They knew each other so well that sometimes she felt like they shared one mind. She trusted him completely, and she knew he trusted her. But something felt different today. Maybe it was the weight of the evaluation, or maybe it was the way the SEALs were looking at her, like she was wasting their time. "Handler ready," the range master called out. "Ready," Maya confirmed. "K9 ready." Maya looked down at Thor. His eyes were locked on the course ahead, his body tense with anticipation. "Ready," she said. "Begin." Maya unclipped Thor's lead and gave the command. "Thor, seek." The dog took off like a shot, his powerful legs carrying him across the dirt field toward the first structure. Maya followed at a run, her rifle at the ready. Pop-up targets began appearing at windows and doorways. Some were marked as hostiles, others as civilians. Thor had to identify the threats and alert without engaging the civilians. For the first few minutes, everything went perfectly. Thor moved with precision, his nose working overtime as he searched for explosives. He alerted on a suspicious package hidden behind a wall, and Maya called it in. The range master confirmed it was a correct find. They moved to the next building. Then the live fire started. Rounds cracked overhead, simulating enemy fire. Explosives detonated in the distance, sending shockwaves through the ground. Maya kept moving, trusting her training, trusting Thor. But then she noticed something wrong. Thor had stopped moving. The dog was frozen in the middle of the street, his body rigid, his ears pinned back. His eyes were wide, darting from side to side. Maya had never seen him like this. In all their time together through actual combat, Thor had never frozen. "Thor, come," she commanded, but the dog didn't respond. More gunfire erupted from the range speakers. Another explosion, closer this time. Thor dropped to his belly and started whining, a high-pitched sound that cut through Maya's heart like a knife. "Thor, heel," she tried again, running toward him, but the dog wouldn't move. Behind her, she could hear the evaluators talking. "Look at that," one of them said. "Dogs cracked under pressure." "Handlers lost control," another added. Maya reached Thor and knelt beside him. She put her hand on his head, trying to calm him. "It's okay, boy, it's okay. We've done this before." But Thor was trembling now, his whole body shaking. Something had triggered him, some memory or fear that Maya didn't understand. She looked into his eyes and saw genuine terror there. The range master's voice came over the radio. "Lieutenant Rodriguez, you need to complete the course or withdraw." Maya's mind raced. If she withdrew, she would be out of the selection. Her chance to prove herself would be gone. But if she forced Thor to continue when he was clearly in distress, she could damage their bond forever. She could hurt him. "Time's running out, Lieutenant," Prescott called from the observation area. Maya made her decision. She clipped Thor's lead back on and started leading him off the course. "We're withdrawing, sir," she called back. "Failure to complete," the range master announced, his voice flat and official. Maya walked Thor back to the staging area, her head held high even though inside she was falling apart. The other handlers waiting their turn looked at her with a mixture of pity and relief. At least it wasn't them who had failed. She got Thor into her truck and gave him water. He drank eagerly, his shaking starting to subside. She sat with him in the back of the vehicle, holding him close, whispering reassurances. "What happened out there?" she asked softly, knowing he couldn't answer. "You've never done that before." Through the truck's window, she could see Prescott and the other evaluators talking. They kept glancing in her direction, and she could imagine what they were saying. The woman couldn't control her dog. The woman cracked under pressure. The woman doesn't belong here. One of the evaluators broke away from the group and started walking toward her truck. Maya tensed, preparing for the lecture, the criticism, the final dismissal. But as the figure got closer, she realized it wasn't one of the evaluators she had met. This was someone else, someone who had been standing in the background. He was tall and lean, with sun-weathered skin and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. He wore the uniform of a Navy SEAL, but there was something different about him. Maybe it was the way he moved, with an easy confidence that didn't need to prove anything. Or maybe it was the way he looked at Thor, not with judgment but with understanding. "Mind if I come closer?" he asked, stopping a respectful distance from the truck. Maya was surprised by the courtesy. Most of the SEALs would have just walked right up. "Go ahead," she said. The man approached slowly, letting Thor see him coming. He didn't make direct eye contact with the dog, didn't reach out to pet him. Instead, he just stood there, calm and still. "I'm Master Chief Daniel Cortez," he said. "I've been working with military dogs for 15 years. I saw what happened out there." Maya braced herself for the criticism. "He's never done that before," she said defensively. "Thor has been through combat. He's saved lives. He's one of the best." "I know," Cortez interrupted gently. "I've read his file. I know yours too, Lieutenant. 2 bronze stars, a combat action ribbon, and more successful missions than most handlers see in a career. You're not the problem here." Maya blinked, caught off guard. "Then what is?" Cortez looked at Thor, who was watching him warily but not aggressively. "Your dog didn't crack," he said. "Something else is going on. I've seen it before in dogs and in men. That wasn't fear of the exercise. That was a trauma response to something specific." "But we've done live fire training before," Maya protested. "Has anything changed recently?" Cortez asked. "New equipment, new procedures, anything different about today?" Maya started to shake her head, then stopped. "The explosives," she said slowly. "The range master mentioned they were using a new type of training charge, something about it being more realistic." Cortez's eyes narrowed. What kind of charges? I don't know. He just said they were new, brought in from overseas training operations. For a long moment, Cortez was silent, his jaw working like he was chewing on something he didn't want to swallow. Then he nodded, as if reaching a decision. Lieutenant Rodriguez, he said, I need you to trust me. What I'm about to tell you, you can't share with anyone else yet. Can you do that? Maya looked at this stranger, this SEAL who had shown her more respect in 5 minutes than the evaluation team had all morning. She thought about Thor, about the terror she had seen in his eyes. She thought about her career, hanging by a thread. Yes, sir, she said. I can do that. Cortez glanced back at the evaluation team, making sure they weren't being watched. Then he turned back to Maya, and his voice dropped low. 3 weeks ago, he said, there was an incident in Afghanistan, a joint operation SEALs and Army Rangers with K-9 support. The mission went bad. The dogs were exposed to a new type of IED, something we hadn't encountered before. The chemical signature was different, more sophisticated. 2 dogs were killed instantly. A third survived but had to be retired. He couldn't work anymore. Maya felt her blood run cold. You think those training charges? I think someone screwed up, Cortez said. I think they brought in charges that match that new IED signature and your dog recognized it. Not consciously, but at some deep level. His instincts kicked in, and all he could remember was that smell meant death. But why? Maya asked. Why would they use those charges here? Cortez's expression darkened. Because someone at Special Operations Command wants to see how dogs respond to it. They want to test whether we can retrain them to detect this new threat. But they didn't tell the handlers because they wanted pure reactions. They're treating your dogs like lab rats. Maya felt anger rising in her chest, hot and fierce. That's why Thor froze. He was trying to protect me. And himself, Cortez agreed. It's self-preservation. It's smart. But it also means he failed the evaluation and you got blamed for it. What do I do? Maya asked. If I report this, they'll just deny it. They'll say I'm making excuses. Cortez looked back at the range again, where the next K-9 team was preparing to start their run. You don't do anything yet, he said. Let me make some calls, do some digging. In the meantime, keep Thor away from this range. Tell them he's sick if you have to. Buy me some time. And then what? Then, Cortez said, a hint of steel entering his voice, we make sure this doesn't happen to any other handlers or dogs. We expose what's really going on here. Maya looked down at Thor, who had finally stopped shaking. The dog looked back at her with those deep brown eyes, full of trust despite what he had just been through. She made a decision. What do you need from me? She asked. Cortez smiled, and for the first time, Maya saw something like hope. Just keep your head down and your dog safe. I'll handle the rest. And Lieutenant. Yes, sir. Don't let them make you doubt yourself. What happened today wasn't failure. It was your dog being smarter than the people running this circus. Remember that. As Cortez walked away, Maya sat in the back of her truck with Thor and watched the next team start their run. The dog, a German shepherd, made it about halfway through the course before it started showing the same signs Thor had. Confusion, then fear, then complete shutdown. The handler, a tough-looking sergeant, tried everything to get his dog moving again. Nothing worked. Finally, he too had to withdraw, his face red with frustration and embarrassment. Maya pulled out her phone and started taking notes. Times, reactions, what she had observed. If Cortez was right, if someone was really using handlers and dogs as test subjects without consent, then they were going to need evidence. As the morning wore on, she watched team after team fail in the same way. Dogs that had performed flawlessly in combat were freezing on a training range in California. Handlers who had risked their lives were being marked as failures. And through it all, Commander Prescott and his evaluation team just kept making notes, their faces expressionless, like they were watching insects in a jar rather than soldiers and their partners falling apart. Maya looked down at Thor one more time. The dog had recovered enough to rest his head on her lap, trusting her completely. She stroked his fur and made a silent promise. She was going to find out the truth. She was going to make this right. And she was going to make sure that everyone who had used them, who had set them up to fail, would answer for it. The fight was just beginning. Part 2. The conspiracy deepens. Maya spent the next 3 days doing exactly what Master Chief Cortez had told her to do, keeping her head down and her dog safe. She called in sick for Thor, claiming he had picked up some kind of stomach bug. The veterinary clinic at the base gave her a knowing look, but didn't ask too many questions. They had seen enough stress reactions in working dogs to understand that sometimes they just needed a break. But Maya wasn't taking a break. While Thor rested and recovered at her small apartment off base, she was working. Every evening after her regular duties, she would pull out her laptop and start digging through everything she could find about the evaluation exercise, the new training charges, and the incident in Afghanistan that Cortez had mentioned. The problem was that most of the information was classified. Maya had a secret security clearance, which gave her access to a lot, but the really sensitive operational details were locked behind walls she couldn't penetrate. She tried searching through official after-action reports, training bulletins, and supply requisitions. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary on the surface. On the 4th day, her phone rang. Unknown number. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Cortez's voice came through when she answered. Can you meet me tonight? There's someone you need to talk to. Where? Maya asked, glancing at Thor, who was lying on his dog bed, looking much better. There's a bar called The Anchor, about 2 miles south of base. It's a local place, quiet. 9 o'clock. I'll be there. Maya arrived at The Anchor 15 minutes early. It was exactly the kind of place Cortez had described. A neighborhood dive bar with worn wooden booths, a pool table in the corner, and a handful of regulars nursing beers and watching a baseball game on TV. Nobody paid her much attention when she walked in wearing civilian clothes, jeans, and a simple blue shirt. She found a booth in the back and ordered a Coke. At exactly 9 o'clock, Cortez walked in, and he wasn't alone. With him was another man, younger, maybe in his late 20s, with haunted eyes and a slight limp in his left leg. He wore a baseball cap pulled low over his face. They slid into the booth across from her. Cortez made the introductions quietly. Lieutenant Rodriguez, this is Sergeant First Class Tyler Bennett, Army Rangers. He was on that mission in Afghanistan I told you about. Maya shook Bennett's hand. His grip was firm, but his hand was shaking slightly. She recognized the signs. She had seen them in friends who had come back from deployments changed, carrying invisible wounds. Sergeant Bennett has agreed to tell you what happened over there, Cortez said. But this conversation stays between us. What he's about to share could end his career if it gets back to the wrong people. You have my word, Maya said. Bennett took a deep breath and began. His voice was low, and he kept his eyes on the table as he spoke. It was supposed to be a simple mission, he said. Hit a compound suspected of making IEDs, capture or kill the bomb makers, secure any materials. We had 2 K-9 teams with us. Good dogs, experienced handlers. We'd worked with them before. He paused, took a sip of the beer Cortez had ordered for him. Everything went smooth at first. We breached the compound, secured the building. No resistance. But then the dogs started acting strange, both of them at the same time. They were searching the workshop where the IED materials were stored, and they just stopped, started whining, backing away. The handlers couldn't figure it out. What did you do? Maya asked. The team leader decided we should just mark the materials and call in EOD to dispose of them. We started to pull back. That's when the building exploded. Bennett's hands were clenched into fists now, his knuckles white. It wasn't a booby trap, he continued. That was the weird part. The explosion came from inside the materials themselves, like they were designed to go off if they were disturbed or moved. But the dogs had detected them. They knew something was wrong. They were trying to warn us. You said 2 dogs were killed, Maya prompted gently. Bennett nodded, his jaw tight. Rex and Mara. Rex died instantly. Mara survived long enough for us to get her to the medic, but there was nothing we could do. The 3rd dog, Duke, he wasn't in the building when it blew. He survived physically, but after that... Bennett shook his head. He wouldn't work anymore, wouldn't go near anything that smelled like explosives. His handler tried everything, but Duke was done. They retired him last month. I'm sorry, Maya said, and she meant it. She couldn't imagine losing Thor like that. Here's the thing, Cortez interjected, leaning forward. After the incident, there was an investigation. They analyzed the explosive materials from the site. Turned out it was a new compound, something sophisticated. A mixture of traditional explosives with a chemical trigger that the dogs weren't trained to recognize. It was designed specifically to defeat K9 detection. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. So our enemies are adapting. Exactly, Cortez said. And that's where it gets interesting. The investigation revealed that this new compound has a very specific chemical signature. It's not like anything we've seen from traditional bomb makers in Afghanistan or Iraq. The intelligence community thinks it might be coming from a state actor, maybe Russia or Iran, providing it to insurgent groups. What does this have to do with what happened at the evaluation? Maya asked, though she was starting to piece it together. Bennett looked up at her for the first time. 2 weeks after the incident, I got a call from a civilian contractor. Said he was working with Special Operations Command on a new training program. Wanted to know if I'd be willing to participate in some interviews about what happened. I agreed because I thought maybe it would help prevent other teams from going through what we did. But, Maya prompted. But the questions he asked weren't about tactics or procedures. He wanted to know specific details about how the dogs reacted. What they did, how fast they responded, whether they gave any warning before they shut down. It felt less like a safety review and more like data collection for an experiment. Cortez pulled out a folder from inside his jacket and slid it across the table. I've been doing some digging. That civilian contractor works for a company called Kinetic Solutions. They're a private military contractor that specializes in training programs and materials. 3 months ago, they got a contract from Special Operations Command to develop new training protocols for K9 units. Maya opened the folder and started reading. There were printouts of contract awards, corporate profiles, and email chains. One email in particular caught her attention. It was from a Commander James Prescott to a Kinetic Solutions executive. We need to test K9 responses to the new compound signature in controlled conditions, the email read. Suggest incorporating replica charges into upcoming evaluations. Handlers should not be informed to ensure authentic baseline reactions. This data will be critical for developing the new training curriculum. Maya looked up at Cortez, her anger building. They knew. Prescott knew exactly what those charges would do to our dogs. Not just knew, Cortez said grimly. He planned it. He deliberately set up that evaluation to trigger trauma responses in dogs that had been exposed to that compound, and to see how unexposed dogs would react to it. But why not just tell us? Maya demanded. Why not explain what they were testing and ask for volunteers? Because they wanted pure data, Bennett said bitterly. If handlers knew what was happening, they might unconsciously cue their dogs or hold back. Prescott wanted to see raw reactions. He wanted to see dogs and handlers fail. Maya thought about that morning on the range, about Thor's terror, about the other teams that had crashed and burned. She thought about the way Prescott had looked at her, dismissive and cold. He hadn't seen her as a soldier or Thor as a partner. They had just been test subjects. This can't be legal, she said. Using soldiers in experiments without informed consent. It's a gray area, Cortez admitted. Prescott could argue that it was just a training exercise, that handlers should be prepared for any scenario. He could say that the dog's reactions prove we need better training protocols. He'd probably get a slap on the wrist at most. So he gets away with it, Maya said flatly. Not if we expose the whole thing, Cortez countered. Not if we can prove that he deliberately deceived handlers, risked the mental health of valuable military working dogs, and did it all to pad a contract for his buddies at Kinetic Solutions. Maya looked between the two men. What do you need from me? We need more evidence, Cortez said. Right now, we have circumstantial connections and one email that could be explained away. We need something concrete. something that proves Prescott knew those charges would cause trauma responses and used them anyway. Where do we get that? Prescott's office, Cortez said simply. He keeps detailed files on all his evaluations. If he documented the planning for this exercise, if there are more emails or memos, that's where they'll be. Maya stared at him. You're talking about breaking into a senior officer's office. I'm talking about getting justice for you, for Thor, and for every other handler and dog that got used in this sick experiment, Cortez replied. His voice was calm, but his eyes were hard. I'm talking about making sure this doesn't happen again. Bennett spoke up. After what happened to my team, to those dogs, I've been trying to find a way to make someone accountable. If you help with this, you'll be taking a huge risk, but you'll also be doing the right thing. Maya sat back in the booth, her mind racing. If they got caught, her career would be over. She could face court-martial, prison time. But if she did nothing, Prescott would keep using handlers and dogs as lab rats. Other teams would go through what she and Thor had experienced. She thought about Thor, about the trust in his eyes even after what had happened to him. He hadn't blamed her. He had just needed her to be there for him. When? She asked. Cortez allowed himself a small smile. Tomorrow night. Prescott has a meeting off base that's scheduled to run late. His office will be empty. I can get us in, but I need you there because you know what to look for. You've been through the evaluation process. You'll recognize anything unusual in his files. What about security cameras? I have a friend in base security who owes me a favor. The cameras in that corridor will experience a technical glitch for exactly 30 minutes tomorrow night at 2200 hours. Maya nodded slowly. Okay, I'm in. They spent the next hour going over the plan. Cortez had clearly been thinking about this for a while. He had backup plans for the backup plans. Bennett would be their lookout, stationed at a vantage point where he could warn them if anyone approached unexpectedly. As they were getting ready to leave, Maya had a thought. Why are you doing this? She asked Cortez. You're a master chief. You've got a career, a reputation. Why risk it for me and Thor? Cortez was quiet for a moment. Then he pulled out his wallet and showed her a photo. It was of him in desert fatigues, kneeling next to a German shepherd, both of them grinning at the camera. That's Ranger, he said softly. My partner for 6 years. He saved my life in Fallujah, took down an insurgent who was about to throw a grenade into our position. Best dog I ever worked with. What happened to him? Maya asked, though from Cortez's expression she could guess. IED, Cortez said. We were on patrol and he alerted on something buried in the road. While we were pulling back, a sniper opened up on us. In the chaos, Ranger ran back to make sure the explosive was marked. Secondary blast got him. He put the photo away carefully. After he died, I found out that the unit who had been through that area before us had reported suspected IEDs, but command had decided not to clear them. Too expensive, too time-consuming. They said the route was low priority. Ranger died because someone made a cost-benefit analysis and decided his life wasn't worth the money. Cortez looked Meyer in the eye. I couldn't do anything about it back then. I was just a petty officer. But I swore that if I ever saw the system treating handlers and dogs like disposable equipment again, I'd do something about it. That's why I'm helping you. Because you and Thor deserve better. All of you do. Maya felt a lump in her throat. Thank you, she managed. Don't thank me yet, Cortez said. We still have to pull this off. The next evening, Maya went through her normal routine. She took Thor for a long walk on the beach, letting him run and play in the surf. The dog seemed almost back to his old self, happy and energetic. Watching him splash through the waves, Maya was more convinced than ever that what they were about to do was right. At 21:30 hours, she met Cortez at a predetermined location near the administration building where Prescott's office was located. Bennett was already in position, sitting in a parked car with a clear view of the entrance. Ready? Cortez asked. Maya took a deep breath. Ready. They moved quickly and quietly through the building. Cortez had access codes that got them past the first security door. The corridors were empty, most personnel having gone home for the night. At exactly 2200 hours, they reached Prescott's office. Cortez produced a key. "Courtesy of the cleaning crew," he whispered with a slight grin. The office was exactly what Maya expected. Neat, organized, dominated by a large desk with a computer and filing cabinets lining the walls. Photos of Prescott with various military dignitaries hung on the walls, along with his commendations and awards. "You take the computer, I'll go through the files," Cortez directed. Maya sat down at Prescott's desk and powered on the computer. It required a password, but Cortez leaned over and typed it in quickly. Maya didn't ask how he knew it. She started searching through email folders, looking for anything related to the evaluation or kinetic solutions. There were hundreds of emails. She tried different search terms: K9, evaluation, training charges, Afghanistan. Minutes ticked by. Behind her, she could hear Cortez carefully going through file drawers, his penlight illuminating documents. Then Maya found it. It was an email thread between Prescott and the CEO of Kinetic Solutions, dated 3 weeks before the evaluation. The subject line read, "K9 Trauma Response Protocol." Her hands shaking slightly, Maya opened the email and started reading. "Have confirmed that we can source training charges that replicate the Afghanistan compound signature," Prescott had written. "Planning to use them in upcoming SOCOM K9 evaluations. Expect significant failure rate among handlers with recent deployment experience. Their dogs will be most likely to show trauma response. This will provide valuable data for your training curriculum development." The CEO's response was even more damning. "Excellent. Make sure to document everything. The more dramatic the failures, the more compelling our case for a comprehensive retraining program. This contract could be worth $50 million if we play it right." Prescott's final email in the thread made Maya's blood boil. "Understood. I'll make sure we capture it all on video. Lieutenant Rodriguez's team will be particularly interesting. Her dog has extensive combat experience. Should provide a textbook trauma response." Maya stared at the screen, fury and disbelief warring inside her. Prescott hadn't just known Thor would react badly. He had specifically chosen her team because he expected them to fail. He had set them up. "Found something," Cortez called softly from across the room. Maya quickly inserted a USB drive and started copying the email thread. While the files transferred, she went over to where Cortez was standing. He was holding a folder labeled K9 evaluation results. Inside were detailed reports on every team that had gone through the exercise. Next to each handler's name and their dog's name were notes in Prescott's handwriting. Maya's entry read, "Female handler limited credibility with evaluation team. Dog has strong combat record but recent deployment. Predicted outcome, complete failure. Status, confirmed. Dog shut down completely. Excellent data capture." Other entries were similar. Prescott had predicted which dogs would fail and why. He had been running an experiment, and they had all been his unwitting subjects. But there was another document in the folder, one that made Maya's heart skip a beat. It was a contract proposal from Kinetic Solutions to Special Operations Command, outlining a $50 million program to rehabilitate and retrain trauma-affected military working dogs. The proposal specifically cited the evaluation results as proof that such a program was desperately needed. He created the problem so his friends could sell the solution, Maya breathed. "And make millions doing it," Cortez added. He started photographing the documents with his phone. Maya's USB drive beeped, signaling the transfer was complete. She pulled it out and pocketed it. "We've got enough. Let's go." They had just finished putting everything back in place when Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Bennett. "Problem. Prescott just pulled into parking lot. Heading your way." Maya and Cortez exchanged alarmed looks. They weren't supposed to be here for another 10 minutes at least. "Back door," Cortez hissed. They moved quickly but quietly toward the office's rear exit, which opened onto a service corridor. They could hear footsteps in the main hallway, coming closer. Prescott was talking to someone, his voice carrying clearly. "I'm telling you, The data from that evaluation is going to make our case bulletproof, he was saying. Those handlers never knew what hit them. Maya and Cortez slipped into the service corridor and eased the door closed just as they heard Prescott's office door opening. They stood frozen in the dim corridor, barely breathing, listening. "Let me just grab those files and we can go over them at dinner," Prescott's voice came through the door. "The Kinetic Solutions people are going to love this." There was a pause. Then Prescott spoke again, his voice puzzled. "That's odd. I could have sworn I left this file on top of the cabinet." Maya's heart was pounding. Had they put something back in the wrong place? "Probably the cleaning crew moved it," the other voice said. "Come on, we're going to be late." More footsteps, then the office door closing and locking. Maya and Cortez waited a full minute before they dared to move. Finally, Cortez peeked out into the main corridor. It was empty. They made their way out of the building, without incident, and met Bennett back at the car. "That was close," Bennett said. "What happened?" "We got it," Maya replied, patting her pocket where the USB drive rested. "We got everything we need." They drove away from the base in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Maya kept replaying Prescott's words in her mind. Those handlers never knew what hit them. But they knew now, and they had the evidence to prove it. The question was, what were they going to do with it? Part 3, The Whistle Blows. Maya didn't sleep that night. She sat at her kitchen table with her laptop, going through the files she had copied from Prescott's computer over and over again. Thor lay at her feet, occasionally looking up at her with concerned eyes, sensing her agitation. The evidence was damning. There were email chains proving that Prescott had deliberately used training charges designed to trigger trauma responses in dogs. There were handwritten notes showing he had predicted which handlers would fail. There was a contract proposal that would make Kinetic Solutions millions by solving a problem Prescott had created. But having evidence and being able to use it were two different things. If Maya went through official channels to her chain of command, there was no guarantee anyone would listen. Prescott was a commander with connections throughout Special Operations Command. She was a lieutenant who had just failed a high-profile evaluation. Who would believe her? Worse, if she reported this and it got buried, Prescott would know someone was onto him. He would destroy evidence, circle the wagons, and Maya's career would be over for having accused a senior officer without proof. At 6 a.m, her phone rang. It was Cortez. "Did you look through everything?" he asked without preamble. "Yes," Maya replied. "It's all there, but I don't know what to do with it." "I've been thinking about that," Cortez said. "We need to go outside the chain of command. We need someone who can't be intimidated or bought off." "Who?" "There's a reporter I know, works for a major newspaper. She's done stories on military contracting fraud before. She's trustworthy, and she has the resources to verify everything independently." Maya hesitated. Going to the press was a huge step. Once this information was out there, there would be no taking it back. "If we do this," she said slowly, "Prescott will know it was us. He'll come after us." "Probably," Cortez agreed. "But if the story is already public, he can't just make us disappear. And if we have evidence of retaliation, that becomes part of the story too." Maya looked down at Thor, who had gotten up and was resting his head on her knee. The dog looked up at her with complete trust. She thought about all the other dogs who had been traumatized, all the other handlers who had been set up to fail. "Make the call," she said. That afternoon, Maya and Cortez met with the reporter, a sharp-eyed woman named Jennifer Walsh, at a coffee shop in downtown San Diego. Bennett joined them, ready to provide his eyewitness account of the Afghanistan incident. Walsh listened to their story without interrupting, taking notes on a tablet. When they finished, she leaned back in her chair and let out a low whistle. "This is big," she said, "but I need to verify everything independently before I can publish. I'll need to talk to other handlers who were at that evaluation. I'll need official responses from Special Operations Command and from Kinetic Solutions. This is going to take time." "How much time?" Maya asked. "A week, maybe 2. I'll work as fast as I can, but we have to do this right. If we get even one detail wrong, Prescott's lawyers will tear the whole story apart. Maya nodded, understanding but frustrated. Every day they waited was another day Prescott could use to cover his tracks. There's another problem, Walsh continued. Once I start making calls, asking questions, people are going to know something is up. This story is going to leak before I publish. You three need to be prepared for that. What do you mean? Bennett asked. I mean that as soon as I start contacting other handlers or asking SOCOM for comment, someone is going to tip off Prescott. He's going to know you're behind this. He'll have time to prepare, maybe even to launch a preemptive strike against you. What kind of strike? Maya asked, though she could guess. Administrative action, fitness for duty evaluations, sudden transfers. There are a lot of ways the military can make your life difficult without it looking like retaliation. And if he's smart, which it sounds like he is, he'll make it look like it's for legitimate reasons. Cortez spoke up. So we need to move first. We need to protect ourselves before he knows what's coming. How? Maya asked. Documentation, Walsh said. Starting right now, you document everything. Every order you receive, every evaluation, every interaction with Prescott or anyone in his chain of command. If he does try to retaliate, we'll have a paper trail showing the timing. She looked at each of them seriously. I want you to understand what you're getting into. Whistleblowers in the military often face severe consequences. Even when they're proven right, even when they expose real wrongdoing, their careers usually don't recover. Are you prepared for that? Maya thought about it. She had worked so hard to get where she was. She loved being a K-9 handler. The thought of losing that, losing her career, was terrifying. But then she thought about Thor, frozen in fear on that training range. She thought about Rex and Mara, the dogs who had died in Afghanistan. She thought about Duke, the dog so traumatized he couldn't work anymore. Yes, she said, I'm prepared. Cortez and Bennett echoed her answer. Walsh nodded approvingly. Okay then, let's expose these bastards. The next week was one of the most stressful of Maya's life. She went about her regular duties, training with Thor, attending briefings, trying to act normal. But every time someone looked at her, every time her phone rang, she wondered if this was it, if Prescott had found out. Walsh worked quickly. She contacted other handlers who had been at the evaluation, and several of them agreed to speak on the record about their experiences. She got military experts to review the documents Maya had provided and confirm they were authentic. She filed Freedom of Information Act requests for official records related to the evaluation and the Kinetic Solutions contract. On the 6th day, Maya got a call from her company commander, Captain Wilson. He wanted to see her in his office immediately. Maya's stomach dropped. This was it. Somehow Prescott had found out. She left Thor with a friend and reported to Wilson's office. The captain was a fair man, someone Maya had always respected. But when she walked in, his expression was grave. Sit down, Lieutenant, he said. Maya sat, her back straight, her hands folded in her lap. Wilson pulled out a file. I received an interesting communication this morning from Commander Prescott's office. It seems there are some concerns about your fitness for duty. Sir, Maya kept her voice neutral. According to this report, your recent performance at the SOCOM evaluation raised red flags about your ability to maintain control of your K-9 under stress. There's a recommendation here that you undergo a comprehensive evaluation, including psychological screening. Maya felt anger flare in her chest, but she kept it off her face. Sir, with all due respect, Thor's reaction at that evaluation was not a reflection of my handling abilities. There were issues with the training materials used that. Wilson held up a hand. I'm not finished. There's more. Commander Prescott is also recommending that Thor be removed from active duty pending a veterinary and behavioral evaluation. He's concerned that Thor may have developed PTSD and could be a danger to personnel. That's not true, Maya said, fighting to keep her voice steady. Thor is perfectly fine. He's been working normally for the past week. This is retaliation because... She stopped herself, but it was too late. Wilson's eyes had narrowed. Retaliation for what, Lieutenant? Maya took a deep breath. This was the moment. She could back down, accept the evaluations, try to salvage what she could of her career. Or she could trust that Walsh would publish the story, that the truth would protect her. Sir, Commander Prescott deliberately sabotaged that evaluation. He used training charges that he knew would trigger trauma responses in dogs with combat experience. He did it to generate data for a private military contractor that's trying to sell a $50 million training program to SOCOM. I have evidence of all of this, and it's about to become public. Wilson stared at her for a long moment. Lieutenant Rodriguez, do you have any idea how serious an accusation like that is? Yes, sir, and I can prove every word of it. Then I suggest you show me this evidence. For the next hour, Maya walked Wilson through everything. She showed him copies of the emails, the contract proposal, Prescott's notes on the evaluation. She told him about the Afghanistan incident, about Bennett's testimony, about Walsh's investigation. When she finished, Wilson sat back in his chair, his face unreadable. If even half of what you're telling me is true, he said slowly, this is one of the biggest scandals to hit SOCOM in years. It's all true, sir, and it's all going to be in the newspaper in the next few days. Wilson nodded, making a decision. Okay, here's what's going to happen. I'm going to hold off on these fitness evaluations for now. I'm going to call the Inspector General's office and request an immediate investigation. And you're going to be placed on administrative leave until this is sorted out. Sir, I'd rather keep working. This is not a punishment, Lieutenant. This is protection. Once that story breaks, you're going to be in the spotlight. You'll be called to testify, probably to Congress. You'll have reporters camped outside your home. You need to be ready for that, and you need to be away from Prescott's chain of command while it happens. Maya nodded slowly. What about Thor, sir? Thor stays with you. If anyone tries to take that dog from you, they'll have to go through me first. Maya felt tears prick at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Thank you, sir. Don't thank me yet, Wilson said. This is going to get ugly. Prescott has friends in high places. They're going to come after you hard. But if what you're saying is true, then you're doing the right thing. Just be prepared for the cost. 3 days later, Walsh's story broke. It ran on the front page under the headline, SEAL Commander accused of using military dogs as lab rats for contractor profit. The article laid out everything. The Afghanistan incident, the rigged evaluation, the contract with Kinetic Solutions, the evidence of deliberate deception. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, it was picked up by every major news outlet. Military veterans groups issued statements of outrage. Members of Congress called for investigations. Social media exploded with anger at Prescott and support for the handlers who had been deceived. But there was also backlash. Prescott's supporters rallied around him, claiming he was being unfairly targeted by disgruntled subordinates. Op-eds appeared arguing that the evaluation had been necessary, that military readiness required tough training. Some accused Maya and Cortez of being glory seekers who were making false accusations to advance their careers. Maya's phone rang constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Friends and colleagues called to offer support or, in some cases, to distance themselves from her. She received hate mail from people who thought she was a traitor for going public with internal military matters. Through it all, she stayed in her apartment with Thor, following Walsh's advice to avoid making any public statements until the investigation was complete. On the 5th day after the story broke, her phone rang with a number she didn't recognize. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Lieutenant Rodriguez, a woman's voice said. My name is Sarah Chen. I'm a staff investigator for the Senate Armed Services Committee. I'd like to talk to you about testifying before the committee regarding the allegations against Commander Prescott. Maya's heart started pounding. Testifying before Congress. Yes, the committee is very concerned about what your investigation has revealed. We believe this may be part of a larger pattern of misconduct in military contracting. Your testimony could be crucial to our investigation. I'll do it, Maya said without hesitation. Good, we'll be in touch with details. In the meantime, Lieutenant, I want you to know that what you did took real courage. A lot of people in your position would have kept quiet. After hanging up, Maya sat on her couch and looked at Thor. The dog was lying next to her, his head resting on her lap, completely at peace. We're going to Washington, she told him. We're going to make sure everyone knows what they did to you. Thor's tail thumped against the couch cushions. 2 weeks later, Maya found herself sitting at a witness table in a congressional hearing room, facing a panel of senators. Cortez was beside her, along with Bennett and 2 other handlers who had been at the evaluation. The hearing room was packed with reporters, military personnel, and members of the public. Cameras recorded everything. The committee chairman, a gray-haired senator from Virginia, called the hearing to order. This committee has convened today to investigate serious allegations of misconduct in the military's K-9 program, he began. We have evidence suggesting that senior officers deliberately subjected military working dogs and their handlers to traumatic conditions without informed consent in order to generate data for a private contractor. If true, this represents a fundamental betrayal of the trust between military leadership and the men and women who serve under them. He looked directly at Maya. Lieutenant Rodriguez, you're the one who brought these allegations to light. Please tell us, in your own words, what happened. Maya took a deep breath and began to speak. She told the story of the evaluation, of Thor's reaction, of discovering Prescott's deception. She presented the evidence, answered questions, and didn't back down even when hostile senators tried to suggest she was exaggerating or seeking attention. When she finished, one of the senators asked, Lieutenant, you've risked your career by coming forward with these allegations. Why did you do it? Maya looked at Thor, who was lying quietly beside her chair. The committee had granted special permission for him to be there. Because it was the right thing to do, sir, she said simply. These dogs serve our country, they save lives, they trust us to take care of them. What Commander Prescott did was a betrayal of that trust. I couldn't let it stand. The senator nodded approvingly. The military needs more people like you, Lieutenant. The hearing lasted all day. By the time it ended, Maya was exhausted. But as she left the building, walking past reporters shouting questions, she felt something she hadn't felt in weeks: hope. The truth was out. The system was responding. Justice was coming. But the fight, she knew, wasn't over yet. Part 4. The System Strikes Back. The congressional hearing had been a victory, but Maya quickly learned that victories in Washington didn't always translate to victories in the real world. The day after her testimony, the Department of Defense issued a statement saying they were taking the allegations seriously and had launched a formal investigation. But they also added that Commander Prescott remained in his position pending the investigation's conclusion, and that premature judgments should be avoided. Maya watched the news conference from her apartment, her frustration growing. Premature judgments? She had emails, contracts, witness testimony. What more did they need? Her phone rang. It was Captain Wilson. Lieutenant, we need to talk, he said, his voice tense. Can you come to my office tomorrow morning? Yes, sir. Is something wrong? Just come in tomorrow. 0800 hours. He hung up before she could ask more questions. That night, Maya couldn't sleep. She kept running through possibilities in her mind. Maybe they had found more evidence against Prescott, or maybe the backlash had gotten worse. She had seen the think pieces appearing in military publications, some of them highly critical of her decision to go public. The next morning, she drove onto the base with Thor. As she walked through the admin building, she noticed people looking at her differently, some with admiration, others with suspicion or even hostility. She had become a symbol, and not everyone agreed with what she represented. Wilson's office door was open. When she walked in, she found not just her captain, but also a colonel she didn't recognize, and a woman in civilian clothes carrying a briefcase. Close the door and sit down, Lieutenant, Wilson said. Maya did as instructed, her stomach tight with anxiety. Wilson made the introductions. This is Colonel Hartley from the Inspector General's office. And this is Amanda Foster, a civilian attorney from the Department of Defense. Lieutenant Rodriguez, Foster began, opening her briefcase. We're here today to discuss the status of your career in light of recent events. Maya's heart sank. Here it comes, she thought. As you know, Foster continued, you've been on administrative leave since the Washington Post story was published. During that time, the Inspector General has been conducting a thorough investigation into the allegations against Commander Prescott.